So my first book, The Anatomy of Anxiety, is a functional medicine approach to supporting people with anxiety. And the central thesis is that we have two types of anxiety. The first type is what I call in the book false anxiety. I now have come to somewhat regret that term because it is so triggering and it feels like invalidating. It's like, what do you mean my anxiety is not real? It's real. It's extremely real. But we can think of false anxiety as avoidable anxiety. It doesn't need to be happening. It is what happens when the body gets out of balance. Could be something really innocuous about modern life, like maybe we're in a blood sugar crash, maybe we're inflamed, maybe we had a bad night of sleep because we were up late doom scrolling, we could be hungover, but these things get our body out of balance and generate a stress response. And then we subjectively experience that stress response as what we call anxiety. And it's really unnecessary suffering. We feel like it's our true blue. We feel like it's our essence and our identity and our destiny and how we're wired. But this is just unnecessary suffering. And we would do well to identify what's tipping our body out of balance, address it on the level of the body, and eliminate all of that unnecessary suffering. Mm-hmm. And then the other type of anxiety is what I call in the book true anxiety. We can also call that purposeful anxiety. And that's not something to pathologize. It's not something that's wrong with us. In many ways, this is what's right with us. If we have a wide open antenna and an intact heart, and we are viscerally connecting to what's wrong around us, our true anxiety is like our inner compass, and it's nudging us. It's saying, slow down, pay attention. Something requires some course correction here. Something's out of alignment. And so the idea with true anxiety is that we don't want to fix it. We don't want to suppress it. We couldn't if we wanted to, but we do want to get better at listening to it and translating its message into purposeful action, into course correction. And I always, if people come to me and I'm like, the revolutionary idea here is the avoidable anxiety, but people are always really interested in the purposeful anxiety because they're like, that's me. I have a wide open heart, open antenna. I'm feeling so much true anxiety. And I'm always like, probably, maybe, yes, but the place we start is actually with the avoidable anxiety. Because often we are experiencing, we think it's all true anxiety, of course, because otherwise we feel a little foolish. Like, I thought I was deeply tuning into the state of the world, but it turns out I was just chronically sleep deprived and my blood sugar was all over the place. And once I addressed those things, I wasn't anxious anymore. So we feel a little silly and called out, but it's okay. Let's meet ourselves with compassion on that. But I want people to always start with the avoidable anxiety. It's the low-hanging fruit, and it's actually muddying the waters and making it really hard to tune into what is our purposeful anxiety. What do we need to change? Because we can feel like we need to change everything if our physiology is all over the place.
Such a beautiful breakdown of that. And I think that's why they're kind of conflating. Back in the day that people had anxiety. Now it's like ubiquitous because it's this avoidable anxiety from toxins in our food and processed food, from this like unsustainable speed at which we feel like we need to do life, this scrolling and social media and the new pressures that put on us, like all of this lack of sleep because of blue light and these unnatural cycles. So that's why everybody has an issue with anxiety. But the good news is, however much of that percentage, 80% of it, is actually avoidable and treatable with lifestyle and awareness and just better practices that support your health.
That's right. And that's where I switch into behavioral psychology mode, because a lot of us know what we should do, but it's really hard to make those diet and lifestyle changes. So that's where I'm always talking to different people in different ways. Like sometimes I want to convince people with science. It's like, here's the mechanism for how blue light is suppressing your melatonin so you're not getting tired, so you're not getting to bed on time. And like, just wear a blue blocking glasses and keep your phone out of your bedroom. And that alone will take care of some of your sleep issues. But sometimes I'm more interested in just giving people the strategic behavioral unlocks that make it more realistic to do these things. Like if we have all the best intentions to exercise, but then we're like, with what time, with what energy, even just knowing taking a 10-minute walk around the block after dinner is one of the most least effort, highest yield ways that we can approach movement, then sometimes that's the unlock that somebody needs. So once we've gotten the memo of like, okay, my physical health or let's put it this way, mental health is physical health. Once we get that and we realize if I want good mental health, my brain needs the physical foundations for it to function well. And that's sleep and it's movement, it's good nourishment, it's community and things like that. So then we switch into how do I do this realistically, given that I live in the modern landscape and it's sort of the broad assault against every single one of these things. It's why we all suffer, is that we're out of balance and we come by that honestly, but we can outsmart it.
So as a successful woman who's writing these books and having a practice and having a daughter, like how are you, I find myself, and if I'm radically honest, it's when I'm really like tuning up the lifestyle and getting sleep and not drinking alcohol and eating better and like slowing down my life, which seems so hard to do these days. But also like hormones for women play a factor, and that literally makes us feel crazy. And then when we're stressed and don't have a baseline of health because of all these other stressors, like the hormones go even more haywire. Like I just had this experience yesterday where I had this frequency healing that was really powerful. It was this technology that was like very hard to find, and it came to town and I got in, had this whole analysis and then treated me with frequencies at certain areas. And I woke up the next day and I was like, I knew it was hormonal because the way I felt. I literally felt like a 15-year-old girl that was just experiencing those peaks. And like, I was like so sensitive, and so edgy and irritable. And I was like, wow. And the practitioner told me that this was kind of like a healing response because we activated and we treated certain things like in my uterus and hormonal things. And there was physical things that I could tell was attached to hormones, but I was like so mental, I could not get a grip. It was like out of my head. None of my tools would have worked unless just like crawling back into bed and starting over the next day. So talk to me a little bit about hormones and how all of that plays in.
God, hormones they become the lens through which we view the world. And that's what's so tricky about everything with neuroscience, is that if there's something off with our liver, our pancreas, we can sort of see the lens through our eyes and then look at the liver. When something's off with our brain, we are looking through the lens of what's off in that brain. So when our hormones are off, we are seeing the world through off hormones. It's influencing everything, our mood and whether we feel likable, whether we can tolerate the sound of our partner chewing. Like it really changes whether we can roll with the punches or not. And it's interesting because we have a lot of cultural baggage around the PMS period. We say, well, that's someone's being irrational or bitchy. And I don't know. I kind of think both the follicular phase and the luteal phase have their distortions of reality, but in opposite directions. In the follicular phase, we probably have a little too much tolerance for bullshit. And then in the luteal phase, we have none. and so what's the truth? Something in between. I think that the cycle is by design. Like in the luteal phase, we have this vision of what's wrong and what we want to address, but we don't have the energy for it. We need to be eating mashed potatoes and taking an Epsom salt bath. But then in the follicular phase, if we can stay aware of the intention we set in the luteal phase, we can execute on it. When I'm working with patients around hormones, here's two kind of hot takes that I want to convey. And one is that over and over and over again in my practice, what I see is women on exogenous hormones like birth control pill, like patches and rings and all of the different ways that we take exogenous hormones. If you are on exogenous hormones and you're struggling with your mental health, it is worth at least reconsidering whether that's the right contraceptive strategy for you. I'm not here, this is not a doctor-patient relationship. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It needs to be considered. And I know I was on birth control pill for far too long, and I was depressed and crazy on it. And I wish a practitioner had said, should we try a copper IUD? And it took me well over a decade to arrive at that conclusion myself. And of course, it changed everything. And I have many patients where their mental health history began with the initiation of the pill. So often I consider that to be an important potential source of a false or an avoidable mood. The other thing with hormones is that, let's invoke that ancient Taoist symbol of the yin yang. where there's the yang aspect, white, masculine, sun, doing energy. That's all well and good. That's the part our world is obsessed with and values. But then we also have this yin aspect, feminine, moon, surrendered, rest, non-doing energy. And the menstrual cycle is actually this beautiful illustration of yin and yang. And the follicular phase, the first 2 weeks of the cycle, which actually starts with the first day of bleeding, that's our yang phase of the cycle. And there's a crescendo of estrogen building up toward ovulation, which I think of as like the full moon of the cycle. And then there's a tipping point, and we enter the luteal phase with a decrescendo of estrogen, and now progesterone's building, and towards the end it actually falls away so that we have the bleeding phase, and that's moving towards the new moon. And I think that our world doesn't allow for the yin aspects of life. So we are living all yang all the time, and it's thrown our hormones off. So can we actually give ourselves permission to be yin in those yin 2 weeks of the month? When we're pushing through that fatigue and going to spin class and doing cold plunging or intermittent fasting or just saying yes to social obligations, when our body is saying, no, we need a salt bath, we need chocolate and to be under a blanket, then can we actually embrace that without negative self-talk, without saying, ugh, I was so lazy today, I didn't accomplish anything? We actually need to see the inherent value in the yin and just really embrace the fact that our bodies go through these contrasting phases and energies, and that that's actually a beautiful balance.